What is the most eerie or interesting story that has unfolded on Reddit? Some guy took a pregnancy test as a joke and it came back positive. A fellow Redditor told him to go to the doctor because hormones in his urine could indicate testicular cancer. He had cancer and was able to catch it early enough that he was okay. I'm not sure of the details after he found out, but they caught it super early and were able to keep the damage to minimum. That's my favorite story. So we should all be taking pregnancy tests. There was recently a story on Advis where a woman asked about the legality of DPS investigating her and threatening to take away her child that she was still pregnant with. What she was being investigated for was a really minor infraction, smoking weed in college or something. Nothing that someone would actually take a child away for. In an update she said she contacted DPS and they had never heard of this agent before. I believe there is still an ongoing investigation into who the imposter is and why she's trying to literally steal babies. That one was nuts. A kid asked for help to apply for college since he was having trouble getting personal information from his dad. It turns out he had been kidnapped by his own father as a young child. Saw this on the news. Apparently he asked for help from his guidance counselor regarding applying to a college and they later found out that the SSN the dad gave him was fake and that he was kidnapped when he was very young. I remember reading a story of a guy who was playing video games upstairs with headphones on while his wife was getting attacked downstairs. He took his headphones off and heard the screaming, raced downstairs and killed the guy. Crazy. There was an AMA a while back of a guy who was going to try H for the first time just for fun. What followed was 7 years of posts about his opiate addiction and the subsequent withdrawal. It's really chilling stuff to see it all unfold. He got better thankfully. The whole Lake City quiet pills thing. A prolific Redditor died, and he was thought to be involved in a group that were rumored to be assassins. Private security? They posted on a subreddit called RLCQP only a handful of times, but all the posts are super intriguing. Forgot to mention, the guy who died ran an image hosting website, which they used to communicate, discovered after someone view sourced it. It's also weird. The guys over at the Stuff They Don't Want You to Know have a great podcast episode on this. It's called Salt Lake City Quiet Pills. Not the most interesting, but interesting as a music fan. Some guy posted a picture of the lost Godspeed You! Black Emperor cassette, all lights flicked on the hairy amp drooling. Only 33 copies of the cassette were released in 1994, when the band has virtually no following. It's nowhere to be found on the internet, and it was thought to be lost forever. Not even the band themselves have a copy, until this guy shows up with one that he found while cleaning out his closet, not even really knowing the significance of what he found. He posted a couple of tracks from it, and by the sound of them most people believed it was the real deal. Enter Mew, who trolled the frick out of the guy. Guy ended up deleting his account without uploading any more of the music. Now it's however many years later, and the tape is still lost. Wow, I hadn't even heard of this. Looks like it may have been a hoax, but I'd love for somebody to find a copy. The one where the guy got knocked out during a fight and dreamed an entire lifetime, but during the dream figured out something was up because the lamp in his living room didn't look right. And he still misses his children. Wasn't there the story about the guy from ISIS, or some terrorist group, that did the AMA and then was murdered shortly after? I don't remember specifically what happened, but that was crazy. He did an AMA and the government tracked his IP and carried out an airstrike on the location. He died during the AMA. There was one about a brother who raped his sister's rapist ex-BF. I forgot how he got him to the drive out somewhere, but the brother surprised him and pushed him down and started raping him. The rapist who raped the sister never filed a report. It was in our confession. That is one heck of a payback, man. There was a guy who posted asking for help in regards to some strange notes he kept finding in his apartment. He later discovered that he had been the one writing the notes, while suffering from carbon monoxide poisoning. It's actually fascinating when you realize if it wasn't for that one Redditor, the guy could be dead. I remember reading about two guys on our fit arguing how many days there are in a week. Don't have the link saved anywhere though, would like to read it again. I can't link it because the post is gone now, But a few months ago a woman posted on our relationships because she and her husband had just left for their 4-month trip abroad and he was abusing her while drunk. The abuse escalated and he choked her, but she survived. She kept updating and it came out that he forced her to make a will before the trip started. People were telling her to go straight to the embassy in the country that she was in for help, but she was afraid to sneak out while he was sleeping. In her last edit, she said she'd leave the post up for someone that knew about it back home, and if it was ever deleted, someone else had done it and she was dead. The post was deleted a few days later and I'm still freaked up about it. A pregnant woman was being investigated by a child services agent who was threatening to take the baby after birth. But when the soon-to-be mom went to Reddit for legal advice, Redditors raised major red flags. Turns out the agent was a sophisticated con artist. I don't know how to link things on my phone, but if you search Arbestiflegaladvis with the keywords pregnant and DCS, it should come up. Not much of a story, but the suicide help section of Reddit is pretty creepy. There was a post about some guy that wanted to end his life so badly, with his name as last day it's peaceful, convinced he was going to kill himself the next day. He hasn't answered since. As someone who has attempted suicide, I could only imagine the motivation to plan out a day of suicide without impulse. Yeah, I remember a post of a guy who was like already took a lethal dose of just want someone to talk to while it kicks in. Does anyone remember a few years ago in the comments of some question, the guy that met some girl on a bus or something and they talked for hours about books? She told him he needed to read Ulysses and that was her biggest featuring or something. It took him years to get through the book because he would get so bored of it, but he finally finished it and wished he could tell her. Apparently she was in the comments or someone knew her or something and there was a really good chance that it was her. There never was an update for that and I really wanted to know if they met again. Semi-Reddit, but the Manhattan bombing last year. Someone on our division figured out that the bomb went off within feet of where a bomb goes off in the game to kick off one of the DLCs. Around a month ago, a pedophile posted on our Suiciduatch saying he was disgusted of what he was and a bunch of other things. The post only reached like 5 comments. Redditors were telling him to make a vow or something about not having sex ever again and that suicide was not the right choice. A few hours later he deleted his profile and we never found out he actually had killed himself. Oh, I may have seen this or something similar. I commented above about seeing it. Had very few comments and the guy hated himself for his attraction to children. I never followed up as I was only on our Suiciduatch because I was feeling, well, suicidal. Haven't since, so I never went back to look. There was one on AskReddit where a guy talked about how he walked down a street as a child and saw an adult who looked surprised to see him, that he thought was familiar. When he grew up to be an adult, he walked down the same street and saw him as a kid. He turned out to be that adult, and he looked surprised to see the kid. I don't remember what it was from, so if anyone could find the link that would be awesome. What? I'm quite sure the cumbox guy and the bloke in the wheelchair will pop up here. Those. And the IT guy who was nice and meanwhile tortured and raped his own son. Some guy thought his wife was cheating on him. He killed his wife and kids. I'm very late, but here goes. It was a regular AskReddit thread, just like this one. About 3 comments down, someone linked to a subreddit. I think it was our no context. And someone replied to that comment with our highlighted blue text. I was there when it all happened. It was a new comment, submitted only an hour ago, when I visited. Apparently, the mods of that subreddit kept up a link that was child P, and deleted all posts warning everyone to the link. 4 subscribers, 3056, rough estimate, around 3000 people. Online, the comments on that link were akin to something in a horror movie, plastered on the wall in blood. Stuff like save yourself and please don't go to that link. As the adventurous person I am, I turned on my VPN and headed on in. I was on mobile, so it was pretty unoptimized. I zoomed in and started scrolling. There were pictures of very young girls, around 11 or 12, oldest at maybe 14, youngest at possibly 8, naked on beds and in apartments. They were playing games and dancing around like any young girl does, but in pictures at odd angles. I never made it past the second set of photos before I noped out of there. It was too late. The images were burned into my mind. I left my downvote, reported it, and went on my way. I never knew what happened to that link subreddit. TLDR. Link and comments of AskReddit post turned out to be a sub with a child P link in it. I saw a post a couple of years ago on our relationships about a guy saying he suspects his girlfriend of sleeping with her father. If I recall correctly, her dad was visiting and every night she would sneak out of her bed and go into her father's room for a few hours. He said at first he just thought she was going in to talk to him, but he could only hear moaning. There was never an update and I still wonder what happened. Eerie. There was the Unsolved thing about the national park guy claiming they kept finding staircases leading to nowhere in the middle of the wilderness. Obviously not real but fun to read. Interesting. There was the whole Jenny saga. A guy claimed he thought his wife was cheating and got a private investigator and shared the play-by-play of catching his wife. This is the origin of the occasional meet for kisses joke people may post once in a while. Edit. Forgot to mention this one was confirmed fake as well. I loved the park ranger stories. He would mention the staircases, but we never got a full explanation. Just kind of moved on past them. What about the guy that killed his sister's abusive heroin addicted boyfriend by shooting him up when he was passed out? I thought it was proven that he was lying. Does anyone remember the dude who was in a coma for like half an hour but he dreamt nearly a decade up where he had a wife and a kid and he broke out of it when he noticed his lamp looked weird? There was someone on Unsolved, I think, from Australia that was house sitting for his parents. He took a photo and thought he saw something in a door and eventually took a video of his house. Well, the internet messed with the video settings and found a man standing in the corner of this dude's house as he was walking around. Super creepy. I think it was burglars who thought the home was empty or something. It's got to be the guy who thought he was homophobic towards his gay roommate because he'd get mad about the random guys coming in every night. The commentators helped him realize that he'd actually developed a crush and was jealous. Baraska, SP, was a good one. It was on Unsolved, so it was fiction, but it was absolutely horrifying when everything all pulled together at the end. I freaking love that story. There was the haunting tale of a man who found he'd been adopted when very young to replace a dead child, and named the same as the dead child. He was under 18, still living at home, and when he confronted his mum, he said it was like a switch went off in her head and she stopped acting like his mum. No more meals, no laundry, no more kisses, no passing head rubs, like he was a stranger living in her house. What blew his mind was when he realized she'd been pretending to love him for years. And no, she didn't have to. He was heartbroken. Too tired to find the link, but a guy posted a photo of him and a few other people claiming that it was taken while he was blackout drunk and was wondering if anyone knew who the people in the photo were. One of them actually replied in the comments with photographic evidence and how they found him, what went down, etc. This sounds good. Anyone have link? The creepiest story I have ever read on Reddit that still gives me the chills to this day was that one story about the guy that was exploring caves with his friend and they found a hole that they started digging into and exploring. Crazy stuff kept happening and eventually after posting that he was going back one last time to explore it, he never posted again. That sounds like the Ted the Caver creepypasta. I like the one about the guy who was convinced his landlord was spying on him, like leaving notes and creepy stuff, but it ended up being carbon monoxide poisoning. There was one story in particular that was on a top AskReddit thread of all time. I read the thread for about 5-6 hours and it was really the initial spark that hooked me on Reddit. But this one story, the visual in particular, will never leave me. Anyway, this particular story was written by an EMT or first responder that arrived at the accident scene. He was a younger guy, early 20s. He showed up to a car accident where a family had flipped in a van and the scene was a mess. The van was upside down and everybody was thought to be dead. After seeing the bodies of the parents and evaluating the scene, he was tasked with going into the flipped vehicle to see if anyone else was in there. He crawled in and what he found destroyed him. The young toddler son of the family was barely alive, but most of the child's body was mangled and stuck under the flipped part of the car. When the EMT saw the situation, the young boy picked up his head, looked somewhat blankly around while blinking slowly and displaying a feeling of loss, confusion and fear. He was too young to comprehend what had just happened. The EMT was completely helpless and couldn't do anything to save or comfort the boy given the limitations on both of their movement. The young boy died shortly afterwards. The EMT said he quit the job after that because that scene visual destroyed him. I wish I could provide a link, but I can't find the story. If anyone can find the link, that thread will seriously consume a lot of your life. A while back there was a girl that had found a video in her apartment of her at a party from years previous. The video was of her being drugged and raped by a man in a sweatshirt. She had no recollection of it at all and didn't know who the man was in the video. She figured it was her boyfriend because he ended up wearing the sweatshirt from the video. She called the cops and he was arrested. There's a lot more to the story but I can't find the link and don't remember it very well. The story of the guy who had a foursome after the company Christmas party and got all 3 girls pregnant ended up being fake, but it was fun to follow the events. I witnessed a comment chain where a guy vividly and gradually revealed the story of how and why he crapped in the urinal at an elementary school. Oh, and it wasn't when he was a kid. He was an adult who has no children, who wasn't a teacher. Like, he literally had no connection to this middle school. Yet the story perfectly explained why he needed to crap in the urinal. People kept replying asking for more details, and the story just kept unfolding from there. This guy posted on Confession subreddit about how his wife made him wear a chastity belt so he wouldn't cheat. She was very manipulative, abusive and constantly accused the guy of cheating on her even though he never did. Redditors claimed that the wife definitely cheated and is projecting it on him. He broke free from that crazy broad. So there was this chain of stories on No Sleep, where it was shown in the form of email, I want to believe, or news reports. Anyways, after a few stories, you began to realize that there was a demon taking charge of the computers and news reports. The demon rolled TIPA like to his. She would also comment in the replies section of No Sleep. I lost me nerve to continue reading, as it was exam time, and I really didn't want any demons around. In fact, if anyone has a link, I would really appreciate it if you could share. I want to finish the story now. I have to search my comment history for the link, but on AskReddit about scary stuff, a woman from Australia wrote about some sort of wildling child ape creature that would hang around her father's rural home. She commented back to a few of my questions, but I just found it so interesting. She told detailed stories about seeing it sniffing flowers and interact with her dogs. Probably a mutt with mange. The girl who was emailed a short video clip of herself talking to some random man from years ago. Whoever secretly filmed that clip sent it to her recently in an email. Last I knew of the situation, it hadn't been resolved. Are you okay? The story about the completely vanilla guy who tried H4n then updated every few months as his life spiraled out of control. Interesting. Yes. Story no. Some guy made a link chain about the perfect dong pic. He'd link those words to his last comment about it and there's about 100 plus links. Ends with a freaking meme. That stalker who kept visiting every AskReddit thread every time he was mentioned in one of these. He was convinced he was doing the right thing but he was a high-key loon. Okay, so there was this woman my parents went to church with. She had a husband, son and 2 daughters. Her husband died after a long battle with illness, and soon her son did too. Everyone was super sympathetic and everything, and she was treated as this charity case. Soon after, her eldest daughter fell ill. It turns out, she and her younger daughter conspired to poison their family members with antifreeze over a long, like years and years worth of time. They were eventually caught and the eldest daughter survived, but with severe brain damage. When asked about why the mother did it to the son, she candidly said he was more than a pest. Both were obviously sentenced, and they ended up doing an episode of SVU based on it. Creepy and sad as frick. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.